Welcome to the School of Love, the place where miracles are normal. Hello and welcome to the School of Love, the place where we learn practical tools based on scientific research towards improving ourselves, living life to its fullest and contributing to the best of our abilities to the world around us. I am Dr. Maria Grajdian. I am an associate professor of media studies and anthropology at Hiroshima University. In my free time, I am doing my best to guide you in building up a life of contentment, joy, and fulfillment while applying lessons learned in school to overcome the difficulties, challenges, and insecurities of the real world. In today's video, I talk about honesty and I deliver 10 guidelines on how to build a sense of sustainable honesty. I begin by defining honesty, then by discussing why and how it is important to be honest and to encourage honesty in others, so that by the end of this video, you will have the tools to start living, moving, thinking like a person who is honest out of his or her free will. And now, first things first, that is to disclaimers. The first disclaimer serves to strongly emphasize the fact that this YouTube channel, The School of Love, is not part of my educational and research activities at Hiroshima University. It is nonetheless part of my privilege, joy, and sense of duty to propagate and implement knowledge, information, as well as motivation and inspiration outside the limited framework of academic endeavors. Together, we can build up a better tomorrow for as many of us as possible. The second disclaimer relates to the fact that I am a trained musician and musicologist, not a psychologist, therapist, or counselor. The ideas I'm sharing in my videos reflect my deep-going preoccupation with life, my own life and other people's lives, and express the results of my experiences, research, and for better or for worse, my failures and my recovery from failures. Recovery which is continuously ongoing. The ideas expressed in the video on this channel named The School of Love cannot and may not and must not replace the consultation with specialists in whichever areas of your life you might have questions or you might struggle with. If you are new to the channel, at this moment I would like to ask you to please consider subscribing, sharing, liking, commenting. Thank you very, very much. This helps us not only with that mysterious algorithm which seems to dominate the galaxy of YouTube, but also with contributing to the expansion of the community of humans doing their best to impact positively the world and those around them by discovering their authentic selves and living life wholeheartedly. Thanks again. And now, with that being said, let's dive right into today's topic, which is, as I said, honesty and how to develop honesty. So what is honesty? Honesty is the ability to tell the truth, or to paraphrase Jordan Peterson, at least to not lie. So telling the truth is a huge commitment and implies a lot of courage. So many of us throughout our lives, we tell lies. And it's not about, really, it's not about judging anyone, criticizing anyone. Is about stating a fact that when in the situation to, for instance, if a friend asks us, how does she look in a dress? Not only me, but I'm sure anyone has found him or herself in such a situation, to be asked, how do I look in this dress? And you think she looks terrible, but you don't want to destroy the friendship. So you tell her, you look great. Yes, buy it and go to that party with the dress. And she does this because she trusts us. Yeah? And then she goes to the party and she looks terrible and everybody thinks she looks terrible, and but nobody dares to tell her. This is, it might sound innocent and it might sound a very quotidian experience. We've been all, I suppose, or most of us have been on both sides, so being the friend who asks for advice and being the friend who gives dishonest advice out of, you know, concern not to hurt the other friend, and out of concern to keep, you know, the status quo, a harmonious status quo. There's nothing wrong about it. And then but what's important to know is that honesty and living in the name of honesty is a fundamental, is a crucial fiber of social fabric, and any decent civilization, or in any decent society, relies on a sense of honesty of its members. And while in the short term, yeah, and when we talk about societies or about historicities, short term can mean like 100 years. In the short term, being dishonest and preferring, you know, a sort of conventional layers of comfortable lies might seem that the better solution. It is not. And by the end of this video, or throughout the video, I will mention repeatedly that sometimes keeping silence when someone tells you something they have done, instead of trying to comfort them and saying something like, look, you know, I don't think it is that bad. Yes, you think actually that what they did is very bad. In those moments, keeping silent, staying quiet, not saying anything, and adding eventually something like, you know, I think what you did is horrible, but thank you for telling me, and so that we can find a solution together. This is, in my experience, and this is not my idea, I've read in books, in my experience, the best solution, is the better solution. So don't try to comfort your friend or your family member or your lover or your partner who comes to you with advice, or who comes to you with this confession of having done something wrong. Instead of trying to comfort them with a you know, a nice lie. I mean, come on, we love them, right? Or we care for them, right? It's better to keep quiet, to keep silent, and to say, look, this is terrible what you did. Yeah. Thank you for coming to me with this, and now we can figure out how to get out of it. I can support you. I can serve as your sounding board, but thank you for coming to me. So don't try to minimize the situation, the evil, with a convenient lie. First of all, because the person, her or himself, knows that this was bad, what they did. Secondly, because it might encourage them to just look over it and then to move on, which is, again, not a good idea, because next time they will do something similar or worse. So how do we step forward? How do we develop a sense of honesty? And the first step, at least in my experience, is to understand the importance of awareness. Awareness is this, what I have just done is creating a space of awareness. What is honesty? What is lying? Why is it important to differentiate? Why is it important to live in the spirit of honesty? And becoming aware of this, of the social impact of honesty, becoming aware of the social impact of lying, and the consequences of this, is the first step. And the second step is to develop self-awareness, which means, am I a liar? Yes. At times, yes. We have all said in our lives small lies at some point, at several points actually, and we all have said at some point, at several points, probably even bigger lies, which then put us later on in very awkward situations when we had somehow to deal with the consequences, with the results of those lies. So self-awareness in this context, in this circumstance, refer to acknowledging that we all are liars at some point. And this is, let's say, part of the human nature. This is part of how we learn, how we are socialized to navigate the world, navigate our life. And developing self-awareness is, as I'll point out at the end of this video number 10, again, is not necessarily for learning to beat us up, for lying, but actually to develop awareness, to understand that lying is more as part of human nature, and that we have to learn to deal with it rather than suppress or repress it. Number 3 is to learn to sense the spirit of time. Why is it important? Well, the Germans call this the Zeitgeist. And why is it important? It's important because times are changing. History is a long concatenation of events which reflect specific developments throughout on the temporal axis, so to say. And learning to sense the spirit of time, which will be very helpful in number 4, which is to understand that the world moves according to specific values. And these values are changing. So not the values themselves, but actually their hierarchy, the prioritization within the hierarchy of values, again to quote Jordan Peterson. So the values are not changing, but the way they are positioned within the hierarchies of values is changing depending on the historical period we live in, and not only depending on the historical period we're living in, but also depending on the geographical area or the cultural context we happen to have been born into, or at some point maybe have chosen to live into. So what does it mean? First, let's take again an example, which is do not lie. Is one of fundamental 10 commandments which Moses received from God on the mountain. And do not lie. So do not lie is a fundamental value of the Western world, at least. But there are times when lying becomes necessary. So no, I'm not talking about lie. It's about do not kill. So do not kill is a fundamental value. It's a fundamental principle of ontological principle. But there are times when do not kill becomes, or when killing becomes a virtue, when in times of war. So in times of war, killing your enemy is a virtue, is something you are rewarded for. Because in doing so, you're protecting your own people. And this is what you're supposed to do as a brave, responsible citizen. So we see that depending on the spirit of time, depending on the historical time, depending on the culture, killing is not a vice anymore, is not something to be banned, but actually a virtue. So this is why it's important to understand the spirit of time, the time you're living in. Is it a time in which honesty is rewarded, appreciated, or not? And which are the values of the time? And the next step is to identify the values and the hierarchy according to the space you're living in, like the historical space, the geographical space, the social cultural context in which we are living. Very often, we do not realize how strong our environment, particularly our immediate environment on a micro level, is actually how strongly this is impacting our values and our worldviews. And again, the macro dimension of the society is always so important. Do you live in a society which appreciates truth, or which appreciates glossing over little inconveniences by lying? Is the society which appreciates rules and deceitfulness, or a society which appreciates self-responsibility and truth? Number 6 would be that to understand that lying and even white lies only serve for instant gratification and short-term delay of the consequences. And in accordance to this, any lie, if not completely decontextualized, so any lie which appears in itself, which doesn't exist actually, will have some sort of consequences. And at some point, you will have to deal with those consequences. And the question is, do you lie now in order to avoid the uncomfortable feeling or situation which might arise from telling the truth? Usually we do. In that case, be aware that there will be consequences of this lying which will be much worse than the momentary inconvenience you might feel or cause by telling the truth, or at least by not lying. So that's why in this step number 6 is to train yourself, instead of lying, to choose long-term benefits by at least not lying, even if they are painful in the moment, so that you do things not for the rewards, but because you must do them. And this is where discipline kicks in. Very often we do things because we are motivated to do them. And we're doing them due to this dopamine release in our brain, which is, as Andrew Huberman so often, so nicely mentions, is not so much the chemical of reward, but the chemical of motivation released in our brain. You don't do it because of the reward, but you do it because you must. You have to do it, and this is discipline. So these steps which I'm talking about are actually refer to building up discipline in your everyday life, so that you develop honesty, not as a means to achieve some sort of rewards, but as a means to develop a better you in the name of discipline. Not rewards, but discipline. Yeah? This is where the training comes in. Train to do things the right way, not because there is some reward awaiting for you, but because this is the right thing to be done. So number 7 is, more concretely speaking, is find an accountability buddy to whom you report every day you have bent truth, regardless of how insignificant that specific lie or lies might have been. This idea of a accountability buddy, and it's not original from me. I have read it in several books. I haven't applied it until recently. It's nothing connected with lying, something different. It's very powerful. when you take this commitment, when you make this commitment to report to someone else every time you do something wrong, you'll notice that it's embarrassing. So while the momentary release of dopamine for lying and solving the problem in a satisfactory manner will make you feel in the moment good, later on when you realize, well, I have lied, I have done something actually wrong, which I have decided not to do anymore, and then you have to report to this accountability buddy, you'll suddenly realize how bad it is. This is so the accountability buddy, best it's not your partner and also not a friend or your family. Best is the way other people are saying is to be someone you have some sort of distant relationship, like a co-worker. So in my case, so this situation where I have an accountability buddy is not about lying, and he's a former co-worker with whom I still have a sort of friendly relationship, but he's not one of my best friends. It's just he's very good at applying what they call loving kindness or loving harshness, and also very positive criticism, which helps. You don't want to develop some sort of mania or some sort of anxiety every time you are about to react something, because this will lead to some sort of paralysis and you won't be able to do anything anymore eventually. Number 8 is that to understand very clearly, that your life is your responsibility. And therefore, you have to take a radical responsibility, again, from Jordan Peterson, and to exert extreme ownership. This comes from Jocko Willink, in your life by implementing ironclad honesty by means of building up this discipline. So many people do not realize how much they actually impact their own lives in manners they could actually do better. And lying, respectively being honest, is one of those things. We actually live lives of long misery when we do not take responsibility for our own lives, and when we say these little lies, we actually downgrade our own ourselves. They downgrade ourselves in our own eyes, because, well, there are exceptions, right? There are exceptions. There are people who think, well, I lied, but it saved me, or it saved my face, or it saved, I don't know, my family, or it saved my job. But there is always, at least with the people I'm dealing with, this sense of regret. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe there was another way. Maybe I did choose the easy way out. This multiplied, this sort of self-flagellation, where we know deep down in ourselves, in the intimacy of our own selves. We don't have to talk to the others, to no one else, but in the intimacy of our own selves, we know that we could have done better, and by lying we have chosen the easy way out. So the idea is not to beat oneself up over mistakes, over lying in this case. The idea is to understand it's my life, it's my responsibility. I take ownership over it, and I'm the only one accountable for what is happening in my life. Number 9, understand that consistency is key. If you allow yourself a small lie due to, let's say, pure politeness, make sure that you put in place from the beginning, so before that happens, a protocol for taking accountability for that digression. So either by contacting your accountability buddy, this should be actually the first step, and or, usually is and, by doing some substantial gesture of repentance. For instance, like donating a specific amount of money depending on the gravity of the lie. It's important, it's crucial that you do not postpone the repentance gesture, as this more often than not leads to slacking and poor rationalization for not doing it, respectively, for indefinitely postponing it. So you'll catch yourself lying. You'll ask again, I did it again. Stop. Go to your accountability buddy. So stop and go to your protocol. So this protocol is something you have set up before. The moment you decide, you make the commitment, I'll stop lying, I'll do my best to stop lying. So not yet telling the truth, but stop lying, which is a more humble goal. You have this protocol. So when I catch myself lying, and this will happen, we all have relapses, I'll go to my accountability buddy and tell him or her what I've done. And then, depending on the gravity of the lie, have 5 categories. For the smallest one, let's say you donate $5. For the biggest one, you donate $100. In the middle, you have, I know, $10, $25, and $50. And be honest with yourself. The moment you catch yourself lying, protocol. So I talk to my accountability buddy, and then I donate. I put, let's say, $5 for this. It was a small lie. I put in a jar, and after 2 months, I donate all the money to some charity or to a temple or whatever. Anyway, that money is gone. And the goal of this sort of repentance gesture is not to beat yourself up. The goal is not this. The goal is to create your inner discipline and resilience. So, and to learn to forgive yourself, to learn to have compassion. You do mistakes, you repent, you learn, it's gone. To stop, to not enter in the first place this circle of self-blaming and self-criticism and judgment. And this is number 10. It's important to learn to observe, to perceive things without judgment, because this will allow you to ignore external instructions and toxic criticism, as well as toxic self-criticism. And again, it will allow you to avoid the mockery for your commitment to honesty, emotional clarity, and mental fortitude. You will have people along the way, some of them are your closest friends or even members of the family, who will criticize you. You'll tell them you have become so blunt, one cannot deal with you anymore. Hey, what's wrong? Be more polite. And politeness very often implies a long line of small white lies, which are the foundation for bigger ones when you have to somehow rationalize and come up with the consequences of those lies, of those small lies. So what's important is to learn to not to beat you up in this process of becoming a better person, because that will hinder you, will create anxiety of all these procedures, and actually to implement it in your life in the same manner in which, for instance, small children learn, or actually, so 6 to 10 years old children learn. They become increasingly more independent, but they are still not very independent. and they will do mistakes. You don't beat them up, of course, at least I hope so. With loving kindness, you explain to them what they have done wrong, and then you implement a sort of protocol on how to deal with mistakes which appear repeatedly, which are in danger of becoming habits. So the last step is very important to develop this ability to observe yourself with kindness, not with judgment, and to delve deeply into your own self and to know yourself. And then, again, as a strategy, when being put in situation where you when you would like to say a little lie, for instance, when as I said at the beginning, someone comes to you and tells you they have done something terrible, and you know it's terrible, the first impulse would be to say, well, it is not that wrong. I mean, could have been worse. No. What you can keep silence. Silence is a big tool, is a very important tool. And if you necessarily have to say something, say, thank you for coming to me. I'm sorry this has happened. I'm sorry you have done this. I'm here, I'm there for you, with you, so that in your process of repairing it. But do not tell something like, it's not that bad, and you came to me, you confessed, and no, well, it's gonna be fine. No. We must learn from our mistakes. We must learn from our mishaps and take failures not as punishments from above or from society, but actually as lessons to learn from. So thank you very much for joining me today. As always, I hope this video has delivered some insights into how to deal with life challenges, and lying or honesty are a big chunk of suffering in the world nowadays, at least in my opinion. I hope, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again very soon. Love and peace to you all.